Hi, everybody. Justin Henderson here at RecruitMilitary. Thank you again for stopping by and watching the February episode of Vetonomics. A reminder for those people that is your first time viewing, Vetonomics is the economics of veteran hiring. So my background, former Marine, I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserve, been here for over 16 years. I have a degree in economics from the University of Pittsburgh and consider myself kind of an amateur economist. But really what I'm lucky about is for what I do for a living is I get to talk to different companies all over the country. I get to talk to operational human resource leaders, small businesses, large global Fortune 100s, and really get to see how these shifts in the economy are affecting the corporations inside of our country. And so last year I started this program and it's been getting some good results. And I know those that have watched monthly know that normally I have guests. Unfortunately, this month, we don't have anybody, but we are going to break down the jobs report that came out today. And then also we're going to talk about some signals I've seen as we move from the Great Resignation to the Great Renegotiation, meaning we're seeing more and more that, hey, a lot of people have quit over the last year or so, or 2 years, their jobs looking for better employment, better culture, maybe relocating to be closer to family. But we're seeing that starting to slow down, especially companies that have good culture. We're seeing companies with good culture that they're not getting the turnover that some other companies are, but their high performers are coming to them and saying, hey, I really enjoy working here, but I'm also acutely aware that if I leave, I'll make more money. And that's really what I'm talking about when I say the Great Renegotiation. All right, so let's get into the jobs report for January that was posted at 8:30 Eastern today. I'll jump into the Vetonomics presentation. Again, you that have seen this before, we've got a new deck, which I'm quite proud of. So thanks for my team for putting this together. But what we're going to do really is just go over the jobs report. First thing I always like to do is just break down the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate has gone back. Veteran unemployment was 3.2% in December, and it's up to 3.8 in January. National unemployment was 3.8, and it's up to 4.0. Most likely, that's Omicron blowing through the country quickly. It's also people leaving seasonal employment for the Christmas holiday and going back into looking for full-time employment. Also, you'll notice that the numbers are pretty big. We went from 5.5 million people looking for employment to 6.9. I think it was 5.7 to 6.9. And then as far as veteran unemployment, that 3.8, veterans are 10% of the US populace or 7% of the US workforce. So when you break that down, that looks like at a 3.8% unemployment rate, you're looking at about 380,000 veterans looking for employment at any time. Going through the actual job numbers, this was what was really interesting is, again, with Omicron coming through, economists, labor specialists were trying to predict either it's going to be a really big number or it's going to be a negative number. You really couldn't quite understand what's happening in this economy. As many people try to study it and who've studied it for years are still perplexed. And this is what was really interesting. We had 467,000 new jobs added in January. And to give you an idea, the growth rate for 2021, the average was 555,000 jobs a month. And you're going to expect this to slow down as we get closer to our labor participation rate, which I'll show you later. But the great part, again, we're all trying our best. Nobody's ever been in a pandemic, moving into an endemic quickly in 100 years. So trying to predict what the market's going to do is pretty hard. So when I put this together and said, hey, it's time to talk about the Great Renegotiation, I may have been a month early or 2 months because this next number really jumps out. We had 592,000 people leave their jobs in January. And heck, half of those could have went into the 467,000 jobs that were added. But we still have close to 1 million people on temporary layoff. And I would assume most of that's in the leisure and hospitality services industry because those are the ones that are having the biggest ebb and flows in any market, in any industry here. But 100%, you'd have to look. I'd mentioned the labor participation rate earlier. as we move from that average of 555,000 new jobs added every month, it's going to slowly taper down into those 100, 200,000 as we get closer to the 63.4% labor participation rate. So what that means is in January or in February of 2020, before COVID impacted the economy, 63.4% of the US citizens were working. Right now, we're at 62.2%. So we're getting close to where we were before. It's just going to take some time as really some of those 5 million plus people or 6 million plus people are retooling themselves as they are looking to go, hey, I don't want to be in this job or industry anymore. I want to be over here. Well, we all know apprenticeships, degrees, all those take time. So there is going to be part of that labor force that is going to re-educate, retool themselves, and then come back stronger. So it's called creative destruction economy. What happened? It creates new jobs as it destroys other jobs. And that's what we're seeing right now. 18, 24 months it takes to repurpose those humans, get them retooled, and get them back out in the labor force. We're still down over 700,000 citizens pre-COVID numbers to kind of get us closer to that 63%. But we still have millions and millions of people looking to get back into the force. What's really interesting was how big of a drop we had in April 2020 to see how fast it's grown back. To give you an idea, in the last almost 2 years, we've recovered 19.1 million jobs. So we're getting there. The labor participation rate actually dropped into the 50s, the high 50s at one point, which is pretty scary. Countries that have those type of issues, Japan being one of them soon, really have a hard time taking care of the elderly and a more at-risk populace. So it's good to see us getting back up into that trend to be more of a healthy economy. Another interesting point, and this was probably the Omicron blip, was telework went up again. We're seeing this more and more office-based roles. Companies are saying, hey, we don't care. If you want to come in an office and you like that type of environment, come on in. But if not, we learned how to do it in COVID to hire, onboard, mentor, train, and bring you into our culture virtually. So it's good to see. Me personally, as you can see, I work from home. I've worked from home since 2018. My wife since 2007. So we've kind of become accustomed to this. And once you get into the routine, it is really nice. Also, another point of reference is the December jobs report. They adjusted it to 510,000 new jobs, which was an increase of almost 200,000. And that happens. If you go back to these labor reports every month and go to the previous months, you'll see there's an adjustment as they go through and confirm all the data, they'll adjust it. So that's good. So far, it's all positive news. We're getting to where we need to be. One of my fun things to do is predict where these jobs are going. Again, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes when you look at this data. It's just more informative. I do this specifically for veterans transitioning military that are looking at, hey, how do I tool myself to get into industry I want? Or, hey, I'm not really industry specific, kind of like me when I got out. I didn't have some type of target. This is the exact job, the exact industry I want. I just knew I wanted to have a professional career where I had growth opportunity that I could raise a family on. And so if you're looking at these numbers, you're transitioning military or you're a veteran at the point of changing careers, really why I'm doing this is saying, hey, these are where the jobs are. These are the industries that are hiring the most. So if you're trying to get into construction last month, you may have had a hard time. One, it's January, so there's not much construction going on as there would be in June or July. And also they're laying people off. So it's a really hard market to get into now. But as you're seeing transportation and warehousing, professional services, the government's always hiring. It's interesting, even retail. is coming back. Leisure and hospitality, again, these big swings you're seeing is just them coming back in this very left and right model of hire a bunch of people, lay them off, hire. And honestly, I think it's because of compensation and really. So before I did this for the last 16 years, I was in the restaurant industry, managing restaurants, front of house, back of house, did it all. And the way that compensation is set up really doesn't resonate in this economic environment. And that's why you're seeing so many of the quits and the rehires in this industry, as the industry itself has to retool themselves. So we have 6 million plus citizens that are retooling themselves into this new product-based economy. And then we have the leisure, hospitality, that service economy that we kind of moved away from, which of course we're going to come back to. They're retooling themselves too to be prepared for that next push, because they are in a very tight labor market and they have to incentivize those people to come back. So instead of the $4 an hour and tips, hey, let's give you minimum wage and tips, or move to a more European model. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes this year into 2023. But again, nobody really knows. This graph I found today, and I thought would be really interesting to share with everybody. This is the total employment in the United States year over year, and really decade by decade. What you saw was this participation rate that was slowly going up, and then you hit a recession, goes down, it's getting higher and higher and higher. But what COVID did took us out 10 million, and we're still recovering, which is pretty interesting to see if that 2030 projection, where we'll be as far as percentage of population working. I'd mentioned Japan again. Japan had an issue about 10 years ago. They really, females started entering the labor market in more professional services. Birth rates declined, marriage rates declined. Now they're at a point where they don't really have that 20 to 30-year-old that 10 plus year old or 10 below, that kind of window of kids that are coming up. There's a huge gap there, which means in 20 years, they're going to be having social services issues, paying for the elderly, paying for social services. And you see this in developed countries. Us having a 63% labor participation rate is kind of low. Denmark, Sweden, they're in the high 70s, to give you an idea of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here if we're able to recover that to really the 165, which pushes us at that little over 60%. But if we can get even higher than that, that'll be better for everybody. But an interesting graph. And all this I'm pulling from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so BLS.gov. And kind of going into that trend that I'm starting to be aware of as we're seeing these shifts, because we're seeing the 50-plus-year-old citizens. Well, the market has done tremendous over these last 2 years. So their 401ks are inflated. Perception of danger may be inflated. And they say, you know what? I'm done with this. I want to retire. So we are already that concern of a really developed economy of more and more people being supported by less and less people because of early retirement, good health care, living longer, everything else. COVID is kind of put in hyper gear for us. So there'll be some readjustments. The rise of the gig worker, individual contractors, 1099s, you're going to get the 65 and older, the 55 and older. I can see them do more of that, one-offs, retiring from my 9 to 5, now doing what I like, leveraging my experience, going that way. But as you can see, that is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics is predicting as well, that as we develop into 2030, that we're going to have really 25% of our labor force coming out of 55 and older. And you can also notice, because of education increasing, you can see less and less labor participation in the 16 to 24-year-old group. And that, again, that's university. That's people going into university, getting their degree, and then getting out into corporate America. I think there may be a shift there that they're not predicting yet, because of the trend of the trades coming back. For me personally, when I started here in 2016 or 2006, companies were coming to us begging for mechanical, electrical engineers. Anybody with an engineering degree could write their ticket in corporate America. MBAs were huge. But now those two roles haven't been hyper affected by this change in economy as blue collar did. Industrial electrician, residential electrician, industrial mechanic, electronics tech, computer networking, troubleshooting. Those roles, which are certification, apprenticeship bound, and that can be accomplished within 16, 18, 24 months. I think, and the compensation's increasing so much, I really do think we're going to see a higher labor participation rate out of our younger citizens than is predicted. Because what we're seeing now, companies are coming to me every day begging for tradespeople. If you're a tradesman, listen right now, this is no better time out there to have that conversation with your company. Make sure you're at the right position, you're in the right company. But if you're looking for work, this is the time. To get on recruitmilitary.com, bradley-morris.com, see where your military experience, where those trades can transition into. Because I'm seeing enlisted candidates like me that have a degree, electrical engineering degree, industrial electrician, getting 2 offers. Engineer, electrician. And they're taking the electrician offer because normally they make more money. And they don't have to sign themselves on these contracts and these engineering proofs. So anyways, something to check out and think about. Now, I did get Bill, thanks for the question about Social Security. That is, hey, not the purpose of this conversation, but it's a great question. That is exactly what Japan's dealing with. Is their Social Security network is at that crux point where they've got to figure out how to save it. We've talked about here in the United States that we need to rectify that at some point soon. I think COVID is going to force us to have that conversation in the next few years. Great question, but right now nothing won't affect anything right now. Another great graph that I found today: projected annual rate of change in industry. So really going, hey, one, we looked at back here, hey, what companies are hiring last month to get an idea of what industry I might want to look at to get into now because it's hot and growing. But here is hey, where's the long-term growth going to be? Where can I expect to have a 10, 15-year career in an industry and then not be like oil and gas? $100 a barrel, we're hiring like crazy. $40 a barrel, we're laying off like crazy. A more consistent growth path of an industry. By the way, oil and gas, great industry. I've placed hundreds of veterans into it, but I tell everyone going in there that it is more of a turbulent industry than, let's say, the food, because we all eat. So what we're looking at now, no surprise that the number one would be leisure and hospitality. One, because we have to recover from what we lost 2 years ago. But two, the more developed you become as an industry, as a nation, the more expendable income you have, the more money you want to spend on being entertained. Only makes sense. I think the mining's coming out of technology as we continue to mine more and more rare minerals for our cell phones and battery storage and solar panels and everything else. That only makes sense. Healthcare and social assistance, again, a educated society, a wealthy society. We're going to live longer, which means we're going to need more healthcare services. Educational, that's going to grow. I was really interested by transportation and warehousing. And I would say my prediction for why that is not growing, because it's the biggest growing industry right now in the last 2 years, is transportation, warehouse, and distribution logistics, because we're buying stuff. We're not being entertained as much. We're entertaining ourselves at home more. But I think the reason that growth is going to stagnate is because we talked about creative destruction economy. I think the warehouse worker, the Amazon workers that are voting to be unionized in Alabama right now, those citizens are part of that destructive economy. They are like the bank worker and the ATM being created. Hey, yeah, you can still go in and there's a teller there at the bank, but there's not nearly as many of those people employed as there once was when the ATM was before the ATM was created. There are companies that we're working with right now that are putting robotics into these warehouse and distribution centers to replace those people so that those people can get educated, retooled, and go into a more productive, more lucrative job. So I think that is probably the main reason why we're not going to see as much growth in transportation and warehousing. It's just more automation, more automation. But what's interesting too is the negative growth I was surprised by was that what they said, one, was that construction would grow a lot less. I think it's goods producing. There's just only so much land to produce new product. Financial activities, I think, again, everything's going AI, automated. You can see that go more and more. The big surprise was manufacturing because, and also manufacturing because of, there's been such a big growth over the last 2 years here that I would assume that it would continue to grow at least for a couple more years. But what could the prediction could be that we're going to level out and go from those move from the closed borders that we're in now to more of a open society and get that. I wouldn't say we're going to go right back to just-in-time manufacturing, but we're going to get closer to it. So that can make sense to me. One other slide was the top 10 fastest growing occupations, excluding the recovery, because we know that, hey, leisure and hospitality is going to go due north when everybody can go out and party some more. But what I'm seeing, it's really kind of what I predicted was that we would go more renewable energy. We're seeing it more and more renewable companies are coming to us that have started in 2016, 17, 18, that are in at that point where they're starting to put product out, and they need military people for field service, for leadership, project management, customer service, sales, you name it. And they're coming to us like crazy. So the wind turbine service technician, those who've been around for a long time, about 15 years ago, there was a big push for wind energy. And we had a couple wind companies come to us and hire tons of wind turbine technicians, and they did great. So we see that coming back too. We see photovoltaic installers, which is the number 3. That's solar panels. That could be residential, industrial. We're seeing it right now. A bunch of companies are coming to us. I'm going to only guess that at some point there's going to be some type of financial incentive for us as citizens to get solar on our house or battery operated cars or something. So it makes sense that photovoltaic installers or companies that make photovoltaic gases like Air Liquide, which is hired from us for 12 years now, and they've hired over 400 people from us directly and indirectly thousands. But so I can see that happening. And then, of course, mathematics, statisticians, AI, everything. If anybody's in operational leadership at a certain level, it's stats. And then going back into healthcare, and then information security analysts. So IT, healthcare, and renewable energy is really probably the main 3. They're going to continue to grow over the next 10 years. And I still think manufacturing. I really think people have figured it out. Hey, yes, it was cheap to move it out back when we did, but now we've kind of figured out how to do it here by leveraging automation as well in a highly skilled workforce, i.e. maintenance technicians that know how PLCs, electronics, electrical, mechanical, that can run these robots and run these machines, will make us more competitive in the manufacturing space than we were. So really excited to see that happen over the next couple of weeks, years. So like I said, the goal of this conversation today was the Great Resignation versus the Great Renegotiation. We had 33 million citizens quit their job in the last 9 months. Right? We talked about almost 1 million did last month. So it's real. But I really do think, after we had the holiday hire for Christmas, and there's layoffs in January because of that. Omicron, layoffs because of that. And then just the natural flow of people leaving, going to normal jobs. I think that's really what compounded that 979 number. But this doesn't mean that we're still not in a pinch. We have 11 million job openings on LinkedIn right now with 6.9 million job seekers. That's from the head economist out of LinkedIn. So we're still, it's a 0.6 of somebody looking for employment for every opening. So really it's almost 2 openings per every human looking for work. And don't forget that those humans are part of the other economy. So they don't have any experience in the economy that's hiring. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide, because the most successful companies, the companies that are using us the best, have totally changed the way they hire and how they interview. And I'll show you that on the next slide. So the one thing I noticed was the Great Renegotiation was a lot of top performers who love their job are renegotiating with their supervisors. My neighbor across the street worked the same company 16 years like me, knew that he could leave and make more money, but just loved what he did. So he just talked to his boss, and the boss said, totally agree, gave him a raise, 50%. So that's great. Unemployment rates, first we'll jump into this real quick. Unemployment rates are lower in 375 out of 389 metropolitan areas. Only 13 are higher, and then one's the same as it was before. So major metropolitan areas, they're recovering. But again, it's white collar office work and supporting work outside of that. It's those rural areas, manufacturing, field service, logistics, supply, rural restaurants, individual owners, small businesses out in rural America, they're having the most trouble because they need to find a way to reach that audience. And it's really hard right now with all the noise of people hiring all over the country. But again, if your top performers, if you're a hiring manager or HR professional right now and your top performers are asking you for raises and asking you for a compensation adjustment, you should be really happy. What that means is you have a great culture, a great mission, and they want to stay. They just know that it's the right thing for them in their career to have that conversation, because if they do leave, they would make more money. Favorite saying for the recession, I've been telling companies, culture eats strategy for lunch. If I call into a company and they're having a mass exodus of people, all things equal, compensation, benefits, all that are pretty standardized. And it's not a polarizing location like a San Francisco or New York City that just can have a high cost of living or something like that. It usually comes down to culture. And honestly, if it comes out of one department, it's probably the supervisor. So what we're finding now is companies will come to us and say, you know what, I'm getting eaten alive, my field service team. Everybody's leaving. And we'll talk to them. We'll say, no, your pay's within band. Everything's right. I don't get why they're leaving. You talk to that supervisor and realize it's an authoritarian leader. And right now in this market, you can't have that. So savvy companies are coming to us and going, you know what? I think we really need to put less emphasis on, have you done this job for 10 years? Now you can lead people to do it. Into, can you lead people? And companies are starting to realize that and come to us and say, hey, sorry, our field service manager is the Peter principal. He's been here 20 years. We love him. We promoted him. He's just not a leader. He's a great guy, great tech, great supervisor. But he doesn't have the leadership skills that we need to get through this tough time. They're coming to us and hiring a leader. So it's really good to see that those intangible leadership skills are now becoming more on focus. And really what I was about to say earlier was I said that the savvy companies have changed the way they hire in 2022. Number one, the job description is dead. The job description was created during the Great Depression, 25% unemployment rate. Companies said, hey, let's build barriers so that nobody can come in and apply. Let's get a moat, let's get a wall, let's put spikes up. We only want the best of the best to apply. And guess what? We're going to run it through legal so that nobody can understand the words they're reading. And there's a lot of companies are still doing this now because it's old habit. It's hard to change old habit. And what they're doing is saying, hey, Justin, we can't get anybody to apply. We don't get anybody. I say, yeah, because you're looking for an experience in a skill-based market. This is a skill-based market. You have to look for skill, not for experience. So what I highly, highly recommend if you're in a hiring position is, there's a guy named Lou Adler. He's great. Catch 22 on Lou Adler, Catch 22 on YouTube. 9-minute video, well worth watching. But really what you want to do is, if you're hiring and especially if you're looking for military, because we're not industry experienced, we're skill experienced. Our skills are in a lineup. Is you want to walk them through the day in the life of the job. A job description should be a story. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to touch. These are your challenges. These are your hurdles. These are your rewards once you accomplish those. That way, that veteran specifically, because that's what I do, can see themselves working there. So when they have that interview with their first interview, they've already made that connection to the job, and they can say, hey, I read that and said what you talked about, your PM schedule and working on these barrel pumps. Let me tell you about how I used to balance barrel pumps back in the day. They can do that. Or, hey, you've got to manage the 5 points of this or that. I swear, if you just put it in a story format, it's great. I already said this once, I'll say it 100 times. Move from experience to skills. What are the skills they need? So when somebody says, hey, they have to have 5 years of experience doing this, great. What skills should they have developed in those 5 years? Well, they should be savvy with Microsoft Office, Excel, pivot points, all that, whatever, right? And then great, let's put those skills in there, not the experience. You need these skills. And again, you put in a paragraph format to tell the story of how you're going to implement those skills, how you're going to use those skills. And the veteran candidate's going to see it. They're going to understand it. They're going to make the connection. And that first conversation is going to be so fruitful because they get it. Also, your application rate's going to skyrocket. If you're HR hiring manager, of course, you want more applicants, not less right now. I'll weed through them. Just give me some people to talk to. So highly, highly recommend. And then also identify adjacent skills and industries. Hey, maybe it's not that they have to know Apple computers. They just have to know computers. A PC is so similar to an Apple that it just takes a little bit of training, then they're fully capable on the Apple. That's what we're talking about. We've been moved into this time where it's the time of the snowflake. Everybody's unique, everybody's special, every company's unique, every company's special, every industry special and unique, and that's all you hear. But for doing this for 16 years, I'm going to tell you it's not. We're just a point away from everybody. Really, it's very, very similar, very, very close. So identifying those adjacent skills in industries are going to help you tremendously. It's going to open up a whole new path of recruiting. And then also, what can be outsourced? I talked about remote work going up to 15.3% again, but really what's big is the gig worker. The gig worker, which I have plenty of friends their skill set is what they leverage, and then they plug and play in and out of different companies. And it brings a lot of flexibility to parents of young kids, to that spouse that's really kind of leading the charge and managing the family. So if you're a hiring authority, look at that and go, hey, does this need to be a full-time person, or is this a task opportunity where we can say one-offs? And here's a big one. I may get some pushback on this one, but make recruiting a marketing task. And what I mean by that is I read a great book by Jeb Blount called Virtual Selling. He pushed it out right when the pandemic hit because he's a good sales guy. He said, I see an opportunity. I'm going to jam out a book real quick on virtual selling. And it was really good. So thanks, Jeb. But one of the things that he put in there was 70% of the information we intake right now is through video. Hence the reason I started this Vetonomics. Well, the same thing in recruiting. What I found is I take that job description. If you're going to use me, direct placement, I'll give you an idea. Take that job description, that legal format, all that jargon, rip it up, throw it away. Talk to the hiring manager. That person tells me about the job tells me what they're going to do, the hurdles, the obstacles, the rewards, all that. I type that in a paragraph format, 3 paragraphs, usually good enough, so that veteran can see themselves in the role. But above that, what I do is I create a video just like this, where I do the same thing. I talk about the job, I talk about the company, I do that 5 to 7 minutes, and I put that on top of the requisition. And what that does is we all can watch TV for 5 minutes. So your candidates are then clicking on that, they're getting a professionally done video, or close to. Honestly, the candidates don't care, they just want to learn. We don't really care how pretty it is. And they learn about the company, the culture, they get to view somebody in the organization, and it really makes a connection with their brain. So that's what I mean by that. Right now, you need to leverage every asset you have at your disposal and get above the noise. And leveraging video content, leveraging your marketing team's knowledge of how to engage people can really help you bring more of the right talent or the right skill set to the team. I'm going to say it one more time. Culture eats strategy for lunch. So if you're having a time and I'll tell you this, if you're a job seeking person, really you want to dive into the culture. You want to understand how the organization makes decisions, how growth is defined, You want to understand those things, because getting in there as a veteran, especially as a military person who's been a part of some really, really awesome culture and really awesome groups of people, you'll know right away if you're in the right spot or not. So as a hiring authority, I'm telling you that bringing culture to the forefront, talking about how it's an intentional, not a happenstance thing, because some of them are great cultures that are happenstance, but the really, really good ones are intentional. They're intentional about how they engage their employees and how they listen to their employees and how they value their employees. So hopefully this information was fruitful. Hopefully you learned something here. And again, we're going to do this every month on the first Friday of the month when the job report comes out. And again, it's Justin Henderson here at RecruitMilitary. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We can engage with messages there. What I'll do as well is I'll go into the comment section and I'll review those comments and answer them best I can. But again, thank you. I know I'm a few minutes over the 30 minutes allotted, but there was a lot of information to cover down. I'd found some new graphs I thought would be interesting. But thank you again for watching. Look forward to seeing everybody next month and engaging everybody in the comments section. Thank you.